Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh, coming up in the next hour. NASA chief on a visit to India discusses collaboration and launching joint satellite with ISRO, hails India's Chandrayaan-3 success. Hamas releases 12 more hostages on first day of extended truce. UN refugee agency scales up aid delivery. Delegates from over 200 countries convene in Dubai for COP28 summit. Host UAE expected to push for low-carbon future that includes fossil fuels. And Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi speaks to workers rescued from Uttarkashi tunnel, says people involved in the mission have set an example for humanity and teamwork. More hostages are expected to be released by Hamas in exchange for Palestinian prisoners on Wednesday, which is the last day of an extended truce in Gaza. So far, Hamas has released 81 hostages in exchange for 180 Palestinian inmates. Earlier, Israel said that the truce could be further extended if Hamas continued to free at least 10 Israeli hostages in a day. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reiterated that the country will push for release of all hostages held in Gaza without exception. Hamas is still holding over 150 people hostage. Earlier, 12 more hostages, including 10 Israelis and 2 foreign nationals, were released by Hamas on the first day of the extended truce on Tuesday. Israeli military confirmed that the freed hostages were with its special forces on Israeli territory. Out of the total 81 hostage released, 61 are Israeli. All of them are women and children. Chief of Israel's Armed Forces, Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi, on Tuesday said that the army was ready to resume combat against Hamas in Gaza as and when the mediated ceasefire between Israel and Hamas comes to an end.
The return of the hostages is a bright spot for all of us. It is also further evidence of the results of the significant military pressure and the resolute ground operation. We have created the conditions for the return of our citizens home. We will continue doing so. We are preparing for the continuation of the operation to dismantle Hamas. It will take time. These are complex goals, but they are justified beyond measure.
And for the latest, DD India correspondent Sarah Coates joins us from Tel Aviv. Sarah, how likely is it that the ceasefire will be extended with many hostages still in Gaza?
Hello there, Shubhendu. Well, look, that remains to be seen. But as it stands, this current ceasefire is expected to expire in less than 24 hours. Now, there's a lot of pressure from the international community to get this extended. But look, we have been hearing in Egyptian media, it is quoting government officials as saying that an initial understanding has been reached to extend this truce for 2 extra days under the current framework that we are seeing. Now, there has been no official comment at this hour from the Israelis, but Israel has been saying that it is willing to extend this pause potentially until Sunday if Hamas can bring out at least 10 captives per day. Now, we did see these 12 captives leave the Gaza Strip overnight. They are currently being treated in Israeli hospitals. And the Israeli Prime Minister's office came out just a few hours ago to say that it has now received the list of names of the next batch, that's the 6th batch of captives and has informed their families. So look, there is quite a lot at stake here, of course. Israel does want to get as many captives as it can out before this fighting once again resumes, while on the side of Hamas, giving more people away will take away its bargaining chips. So it's certainly a situation that will have a lot of discussion today as talks do continue right around the globe to try and extend this ceasefire. Shibendu.
Sarah, how fragile is this pause? There are reports of cracks appearing in the truce. What more can you tell us about it?
Certainly very fragile. We are hearing unconfirmed reports coming in at this hour of yet another potential violation in the northern part of the Gaza Strip. Palestinian sources on the ground in the coastal enclave are saying that there has been an exchange of fire in the northern part of the Gaza Strip. It's understood that 2 Palestinians have been wounded severely. We will have more information on this potential developing story a little later on. But look, this follows another couple of violations late yesterday. The IDF put out a statement saying that a number of its troops were wounded when 3 explosive devices detonated, also in the northern part of the Gaza Strip. They then said that they fired at the source, at a Palestinian source believed to be Hamas. While a little earlier today, it's understood that an Israeli gunship fired on a beach in Khan Yunis down in the southern part of the Gaza Strip. So look, it's still yet to be seen as to what effect these latest reports could have on this current ceasefire. But as I said, there's a lot of work going on right now around the clock internationally to try and calm things down and get that extended.
Okay, and finally, Sarah, with a greater focus has been on the release of hostages, how has this fragile truce also offered an opportunity to scale up aid delivery in Gaza?
Well, look, according to aid agencies and also the United Nations, the supplies that have been going into the Gaza Strip are simply not enough. Pictures are coming in showing people desperately trying to get water from trucks going in and trying to collect supplies before this current ceasefire runs out. Now, aid agencies say there's simply not enough to go around. We do know that the Rafah border crossing, which is, of course, that crossing down in southern Gaza, which runs into Egypt, it's been the crossing that has been used to transport these goods into the Strip, but it was originally designed as a pedestrian crossing. So what it means is that the trucks that are going in at a very, very slow rate, simply not enough to give these people what they need. And this is why the UN aid chief, Martin Griffiths, he is today in Jordan. He'll be heading discussions on potentially opening the Kerem Shalom crossing. Now, this is a tri-border crossing between Gaza, Egypt and also Israel. And this is the crossing that is designed for trucks. Before this blockade on the Strip, it was seeing 60% of the trucks going in of this aid supplied into the Strip daily. So look, this would be a big win if Griffiths is able to convince Israeli authorities and Egyptian authorities to open this crossing.
Sarah, thanks very much for joining us with those updates from Tel Aviv. And visuals released by Israel's army shows humanitarian aid trucks purportedly leaving Israel on Tuesday to deliver gas and diesel to Gaza through Egypt. The prolonged 6-day truce in Gaza Strip conflict has allowed about 800 aid trucks to enter Gaza. And the first of the 3 US planes with humanitarian supplies for Gaza landed in Egypt on Tuesday. Meanwhile, the UN Refugee Agency says it has scaled up aid delivery in the northern part of Gaza during the humanitarian pause. A video released by the agency on Tuesday shows the staff working with aid trucks loaded with humanitarian supplies, including food, medicines, fuel, meant to be delivered to Gaza and north governorates of the 5th day of the extended 6-day truce in the Gaza conflict. Foreign ministers of the group of G7 countries have shown support towards further extension of the pause in Gaza. Foreign ministers in a joint statement say that every effort must be made to ensure humanitarian support for civilians, including food, water, fuel and medical supplies. The statement further says G7 nations support the further extension of this pause and future pauses as needed to enable assistance to be scaled up and to facilitate the release of all hostages. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is set to visit Middle East, focusing on securing a lasting ceasefire and the release of all Hamas-held hostages. This marks the third trip for the leader to the region since October 7th attack. DD India's Nick Harper gets us more from Washington.
His top diplomat is returning to the Middle East for more talks on the conflict in Gaza. Secretary of State Antony Blinken will visit Israel, the West Bank and the United Arab Emirates during the course of this week. The US State Department says he'll head there after wrapping up a visit to North Macedonia. The Biden administration is aiming to push for more humanitarian aid to enter Gaza and to secure the release of all the remaining hostages that were kidnapped by Hamas during the attack on October the 7th. But Washington is also pressing for another extension to the Israel-Hamas ceasefire beyond the two-day truce extension, even for a permanent end to the fighting. Part of Blinken's aim is to discuss a long-term solution to the crisis and trying to engage Israel on what happens next, including the long-talked-about creation of an independent Palestinian state through the two-state solution. The Biden administration has already ruled out long-term Israeli occupation of Gaza, instead calling for a permanent political solution to the long-standing conflict. Blinken's visit comes after CIA Director William Burns held meetings in Qatar on Tuesday. He met with his Israeli and Egyptian counterparts, including the director of Israel's intelligence service, Mossad. Burns has become a main player in the Biden administration's efforts to get all the hostages released. As the former ambassador to Jordan, the CIA director has experience working in the Middle East and building trust with leaders in the region. Nick Harper in Washington, reporting for DD India.
A report tabled in the UN General Assembly has called on Israel to adhere to all UN resolutions. The Committee on Exercise of Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian People reports to the Assembly annually, and its 2023 report, it recommends the resumption of meaningful multilateral negotiations for peace between Israel and Palestine. DD India's Jody Jacobs reports from United Nations ahead of Security Council meeting on Middle East conflict.
The report was tabled in the United Nations General Assembly on Tuesday and calls for the resumption of meaningful multilateral negotiations for peace. It also calls on Israel to halt and reverse its ongoing annexation, home demolitions, settlement expansions and the forced displacement of Palestinians. According to the report, it also called on Israel to adhere to UN resolutions and international humanitarian law. The Committee on the Exercise of the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian People was established in 1975 and reports to the UN General Assembly annually. Several member states used the opportunity to once again condemn the violence in the Middle East and have called on Israel to end the bombardment and violence in Gaza. The President of the General Assembly, in his address, said that the Assembly had agreed in 1947 to collectively address the issue of Israel and Palestine and has urged member states to uphold its responsibility to support the two sides to peacefully resolve this conflict. Israel has condemned the release of the committee's recommendations, claiming it's one-sided, disproportionate, detached and biased. While the Palestinian Special Observer here at the United Nations told the packed General Assembly that member states cannot and shouldn't allow the fighting to resume after this fragile ceasefire, which has claimed the lives of innocent civilians. On Wednesday, the United Nations will observe the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people, while the UN Security Council will discuss the Middle East matter. The meeting is set to be chaired by Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi. Jody Jacobs at the United Nations, reporting for DD India.
Time for a short break, but still to come on DD India News Hour. India at the UN welcomes release of hostages, calls for unconditional return of the remaining captives. Delegates from over 200 countries convene in Dubai for the COP28 summit.
Get ready for the groundbreaking event that will shape the future of our planet. This November, the world unite in Dubai for COP28, the pivotal UN Climate Summit. Join us as global leaders confront climate challenges and strive for a sustainable future. Join us in Dubai, where leaders from across the globe, including Prime Minister Narendra Modi from India, unite to lead the way forward. Explore cutting-edge solutions as we highlight India's leadership in the global pursuit of a greener, more sustainable future. Join DD India's round-the-clock coverage and a voice for a change. Let's shape a climate-resilient future.
Welcome back. You're watching DT India News Hour. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. India showed its solidarity with people of Palestine at United Nations ahead of International Day of Solidarity. During the UNGA meeting, Permanent Representative of India to the UN, Ruchira Kamboj, said India welcomes humanitarian pauses that will ensure timely and continuous delivery of humanitarian aid.
The humanitarian pauses is a welcome step to ensure timely and continuous delivery of humanitarian aid. We, on our part, have sent 70 tons of humanitarian goods, including 16.5 tons of medicines and medical supplies. There can be no justification for terrorism and hostage-taking. We also call for the immediate and unconditional release of the remaining hostages.
Further in her address, Kamboj says that India has always supported a negotiated two-state solution to the Israel-Palestine issue.
India has always supported a negotiated two-state solution to the Israel-Palestine issue, leading to the establishment of a sovereign, independent and viable state of Palestine, living within secure and recognized borders, side by side in peace with Israel. India, on its part, Mr. President, will continue to support the Palestinian people through our bilateral development partnership, which covers a wide range of sectors, including health, education, women's empowerment, entrepreneurship, and information technology, and will also continue to send humanitarian assistance to the people of Palestine.
COP28 host this year, UAE, is expected to push for a low-carbon future that includes fossil fuel, as delegates from over 200 countries prepare to convene the climate summit in Dubai on Thursday. UAE is one of the world's largest oil producers. The push comes as nations remain divided over phasing out coal and oil and ramping up technologies like carbon capture that curb fossil fuels' environmental impacts. Replacing fossil fuels with clean energy sources like solar, wind power is among the key focus areas of the summit. And DD India correspondent Tapash Bhattacharya is covering the COP28 event in Dubai. He reports on the pivotal moments shaping global climate initiatives. Here are the 7 key themes shaping the discussions at COP28.
At a pivotal junction for worldwide climate initiatives, COP28 is poised to be a focal point in Dubai. Scheduled from November 30th to December 12th, against the backdrop of geopolitical transformation, apprehension surfaces regarding the global energy infrastructure's ability to address climate change and tackle energy crisis. Here are the 7 key themes shaping the discussion at COP28. Emissions mitigation targets. The current targets fall short of limiting global temperature rise. Phase out fossil fuels. Debate on proposal to phase out unabated fossil fuel use. Financing from the developed nations. In 2009, developed nations pledged $100 billion a year for developing nations for climate mitigation and adaptation, to be met in 2020. The goal was not met until 2023 and is well below what developing nations have indicated is necessary for them to meet their most aggressive climate-related target. Industry-led solutions, low-carbon innovations, focus on tripling global renewable energy capacity and methane elimination by 2030. Differences between developed and developing nations. Challenges in the agreement on funding mechanism for loss and damage. COP26 saw the finalization of the Paris Agreement Article 6 rulebook for international funding and accounting of carbon emission reduction across borders. This next step is necessary to drive greater reduction at lower cost to achieve and go beyond the nationally determined contribution targets. Reform role of private sector investment. Financing the energy sector transition remains a key topic of discussion. As multilateral development banks undergo a period of structural reform, questions remain regarding their role in financing the energy transition in developing nations. As nations converge to address these pressing issues, COP28 becomes a pivotal moment in shaping a sustainable and resilient future. The world watches as global leaders navigate challenges, striving for collective action and impactful decision for the well-being of our planet. With camera person Jayashankar, this is Tapush Bhattacharya for TD India from Dubai.
Carbon credit markets could play a critical role in the global drive to net zero emissions, but the industry is marred by questions over transparency standards and integrity of the system. Experts have described the next few years as a sink or swim moment for the carbon offsetting, much of it hinging on addressing credibility concerns. DD India correspondent Patrick Falk gets us more.
Now, what typically most of the data sets that are being utilized is of this caliber data set that's loading right now.
Clinton Libby is founder and managing director of Kumi Analytics. The company integrates satellite imagery with machine learning to assess environmental changes and to calculate carbon offsetting credits. What you see here is a satellite image measuring forest canopy density. On the right is the high-resolution detail Kumi Analytics gathers to make its measurements. On the left is the low-resolution imagery many other companies currently employ to make their calculations.
The issue that we face in the market right now, particularly in the carbon markets, is they're based on methodologies developed 15 to 20 years ago, which did not leverage technology to its fullest capability.
The data collected by Libby covers a nature-based carbon offsetting project to conserve and restore mangrove forests in Indonesia's Sumatra province. It's the first project using Kumi Analytics methodology to calculate and verify voluntary carbon offsets, and it aims to address growing criticism of the industry. The carbon credits business is undergoing a credibility crisis, centering in part around the accuracy of the data gathered to calculate and issue offsetting credits. One major report published earlier this year found that 90% of rainforest carbon offsets issued by the world's largest certifier of credits are worthless. Such reports are weighing on the market. Companies bought just 155 million offsets in 2022, 4% less than the year before because of fears over reputational risk from purchasing low-quality credits. Libby says the accuracy and frequency of data gathered to calculate credits is key to overcoming some of the concerns. Making it openly available for auditing purposes is another.
It's upsetting to me when we see certain companies that get in trouble and say that they're greenwashing when they invested tens of millions of dollars into projects.
Nature-based solutions account for around a third of carbon offsetting. Experts say voluntary offsets need to grow 15 times what current levels are by 2030 to meet the goal of staying within the targeted 1.5% global temperature rise. Rebuilding confidence in the system is crucial.
So what we are really looking at is saying, how do we make sure that a lot of these criticisms, to an extent which may be fair, but also stop any investment in nature-based solutions, which we absolutely need to stop both nature loss and climate and mitigate climate change.
Equally important is for companies looking to invest in credits to demand change and to ensure offsets are validated accurately with the technology that's at hand today. Patrick Falk in Singapore for DD India.
In an exclusive conversation with DD India's Munmun Bhattacharya, Director General of Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, Amit Prothi shares his expectations from COP28 in Dubai. You can watch the full interview at 8:30 p.m. IST or 1500 hours GMT on 29th November.
COP28 is here. Yeah. What is your biggest expectation from it?
I think we've made this
adaptation finance space is growing. And my expectation is that even this year now, there'll be a lot more discussion on how do you direct more financing towards adaptation solutions. Now that requires a better understanding of adaptation solutions. A lot of discussions are around that, what is an adaptation solution? It's, somehow on the mitigation side, it's easy is not the word, but it's easier to understand what you're doing because it's all related to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. On the adaptation side, it's a little bit more challenging. How do you define an adaptation project? Is still being, now there's evidence building. So I'm hoping a lot more solutions in the adaptation space, a lot more financing. So moving that needle from 5% of climate finance to maybe much more.
Moving on, Russia launched 21 drones and 3 cruise missiles overnight on Ukraine in retaliation. Ukraine's Air Force says all the drones and 2 missiles were destroyed before reaching their targets. The Iranian-made Shahid drones were headed towards Khmelnytskyi region and the missiles for the southern parts of Ukraine. Earlier on Wednesday, Russia's defense ministry said a frigate of its Black Sea fleet launched an attack with 4 cruise missiles on Ukraine's military infrastructure, but it was not clear when the attack took place. The US Senate will begin consideration of a package including aid for Israel and Ukraine next week. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said that the aid bill is needed even if there is no agreement with Republicans on funding for border security measures. Schumer also called this demand the biggest holdup to delivering new funds to Ukraine's defense system. US President Joe Biden has asked Congress last month to approve a $106 billion in funding, but the funding has not been approved as yet. And foreign ministers from the NATO alliance have reiterated their support for Ukraine at a meeting in Brussels. This comes as domestic political challenges have hampered support from the United States and the European Union. Let's take a look at DD India correspondent Alex Cadia's report from Brussels.
The big question coming into this meeting was whether or not Ukraine fatigue was setting in among NATO allies, and if the alliance's support might be weakening. The response from some of NATO's key allies was clear. They will stand with Ukraine for as long as it takes. The alliance's Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg still found it necessary to urge NATO allies to stay the course in their support for Kyiv. Despite Republicans in the United States blocking more aid for Ukraine and Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban doing the same in Europe, Stoltenberg highlighted recent new and substantial pledges of support for Ukraine.
We have seen major new announcements just in recent days. Germany pledged 8 billion euros for next year, and the Netherlands pledged over 2 billion euros. Romania has opened an F-16 training center for Ukrainian pilots. Allies, including the US and Finland, are sending more air defense and ammunition. And 20 allies have established an air defense coalition for Ukraine. All of this helps to save Ukrainian lives and sends a message to Russia that our support will not falter.
Beyond Ukraine, the ministers also discussed the situation in the Western Balkans and the bloc's relationship with China, defining issues for the future of NATO. And as has been the case for the past year and a half, the allies also awaited movement on Sweden's application to join the alliance, an application still being blocked by Turkey and Hungary, despite Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg saying the time has come to approve it. Despite frustrations and some disunity over Swedish membership, NATO allies have so far been focused on showing a united front, united in their long-term support for Ukraine. Alex Cadier at NATO headquarters in Brussels, reporting for DD India.
Let's now take a look at other stories making news around the world. Flooding in New South Wales and southeast Queensland has led to lost lives, homes, belongings, pets and livelihoods. According to the National Met Bureau, the heavy rains expected to lash Victoria State the next day. The New South Wales State Emergency Service had conducted 7 rescues and were concerned by forecast thunderstorms. Death toll due to severe flash floods triggered by natural weather phenomena of El Nino in Kenya jumps to 120. The devastating floods have submerged towns and villages across East Africa, washed away thousands of homes, while farmland has been submerged. In Kenya, at least 90,000 households have been forced to leave their homes. A US military V-22 Osprey aircraft crashed near an island in western Japan on Wednesday with 8 people on board. According to the spokesperson, the crash happened around 2:47 p.m. local time, with local residents reporting the aircraft had fire blowing from its left engines as it fell into the sea. The new Mayan Jade Museum, located within the Santiago Ranch Natural Reserve in Guatemala, has revealed to the world replicas of ancient Mayan pieces. These replicas have been in the works for a decade and were unveiled for the first time to the public. Time for a short break. Still to come on DD India News Hour. NASA chief on visit to India, collaboration to launch joint satellite with ISRO. We discuss the road ahead. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi speaks to workers rescued from Uttarakashi tunnel. And Virgin Atlantic completes maiden flight on 100% sustainable fuel.
What is your priority number one?
Build the brand of the organization so it's well known around the world.
What is your challenge number one?
Capacity.
Where do you see world infrastructure in 2030?
Much better informed with risk, like risk information that is being used a lot more.
And by 2050?
At 2050, most infrastructure that's being built is resident infrastructure.
What is the first task cut out for you now?
COP 28.
Turning crisis into opportunity, transforming ideas into action, stories of real change, tales of sustainable solution. This series is going to tell stories of such change makers. Watch Change Makers on DD India. Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Our top stories. NASA chief on a visit to India discusses collaboration and launching joint satellite with ISRO, hails India's Chandrayaan-3 success. Hamas releases 12 more hostages on first day of extended truce. UN Refugee Agency scales up aid delivery. Delegates from over 200 countries convene in Dubai for the COP28 summit. Host UAE expected to push for carbon-low future that includes fossil fuels. A high-level delegation of NASA, led by its administrator, Bill Nelson, called on Indian Minister of Science and Technology, Atomic Energy, Space, Dr. Jitendra Singh in New Delhi on Tuesday. Both sides discussed over the joint launch of microwave remote sensing satellite for Earth observation named NASA-ISRO Synthetic Aperture Radar in the first quarter of next year. The satellite is targeted for launch on board India's GSLV. Data from NISA will be highly suitable for studying the land ecosystems. ISRO and NASA have formed a joint working group on human spaceflight cooperation as well and are exploring cooperation in radiation impact studies. The Indian side informed that a concept paper on the implementing arrangement is under consideration between ISRO and NASA. ISRO is also exploring the feasibility of utilizing NASA's hypervelocity impact test facility for testing the Gaganyaan module. Congratulating Dr. Jitendra Singh for the historic Chandrayaan-3 landing, Bill Nelson urged Minister for expediting the program related to India's first astronaut aboard a NASA rocket to the International Space Station. And to talk about the potential of ISRO-NASA cooperation, we are joined by our guest, Lieutenant General Retired Anil Bhatt, DG, Indian Space Association. General Bhatt, good afternoon and welcome. Now, how do you see the significance of NASA chief's visit, and how does it pave the way for the future cooperation between the two premier space agencies?
Cooperation between NASA and ISRO is as old as when ISRO was formed. In fact, the first rocket which was launched by INCOSPAR, the forerunner of ISRO, in 1963 was a Nike Apache rocket of the Americans. Thereafter, relationship between both the nations have been there, even for the SITE program, and in recent times, of course. Firstly, we have in June, when the Prime Minister was there, the NSAs of the two countries have signed the Critical and Emerging Technology Pact in June 2023. As also the Artemis Accord, India has become a signatory of it, with which exploration of the moon and Mars and beyond in cooperation with NASA would be done. And of course, what you mentioned just now in the news, NISAR, that is the NASA-ISRO satellite aperture radar, the satellite which is there, one of the most expensive satellites in the world, would be launched in the first quarter of next year.
And to these exciting space missions ahead for India, whether it is the remote sensing satellite or particularly the human space flight, how do you see the importance of convergence of the expertise of NASA and ISRO?
This, like one of the best examples of this convergence of scientific expertise of the two nations has been this NISAR satellite, which has two radars of L and S band, where the L band has been made by the Americans, the S band has been made in India. And this complete satellite, the radar had gone to America, it was put into the satellite, thereafter it has come into India, it is being tested there, and this contribution for SAR, which will be used for scientific purposes, for disaster management, for agriculture, for environment, will be a joint cooperation between the two nations.
And any conversation, General Bhatt, also centers around the success of Chandrayaan-3 mission. Do you also see that mission, in a way, reinvigorated global attention on India's space program and potential?
Yes. Here I would like to mention, even in Chandrayaan-1, one of the testing equipment in which detected water was an American instrument. So we have been having even cooperation in Chandrayaan-1 and even in Chandrayaan-3. And in the space domain, in the scientific domain, our cooperation with USA, I'm very sure, will continue. And of course...
Yes, and General Bhatt, what are the strengths you would say that ISRO brings to the table? Its cost-effective solutions have been in focus always.
Oh yes, that is one thing. Our ISRO has a great name, is that they've been able to effect solutions for launching Chandrayaan, Aditya, even the mission to Mars at much lower costs. And of course, we have a legacy of scientific knowledge, expertise, which has grown over in the last 60 years.
Right. And sir, the recent reforms that have been introduced in the space sector, the rise of space startups in the country as well, how has that expanded the potential of the sector and the program?
Oh, very rightly said by the ISRO chairman, space, which was only ISRO's domain, now has become the Indian space enterprise led by ISRO, having academia, having private partners, having startups. And we are so proud that 140 of our startups are venturing into all domains of space, be it launching of rockets, where 2 to 3 companies, startups are there, manufacturing of satellites, and into many, many applications. We definitely see the space sector in India blooming in a few years.
Right. And General Bhatt, finally, there is also a commercial aspect to the space sector. India has emerged as a credible launcher of satellites for the world as well. But yet it occupies, if I quoted correctly, about 2% of the $400 billion space industry. How do you see the road ahead?
So you are very right. And this is one of the reasons the government decided to open space to private sector, because being a spacefaring nation, we deserved a larger share of 450 billion, as they say now, and it will become a 1 trillion space economy. And as per the study done by InSpace, in 10 years, their decadal vision is that we would go to 8 to 10% of the global space economy, which would be really a great jump, about 40 to 50 billion.
There, General Anil Bhatt, thank you very much for joining us in News Hour and sharing your perspective. Moving on, after almost 17 days of intense efforts by multiple agencies, all 41 workers trapped in Silkyara tunnel in North India's Uttarakhand were evacuated safely on Tuesday. As the Rathole miners came out after clearing about 8 to 10 meters of debris, NDRF personnel took over, brought out the workers through the passage in stretchers. Union Minister V.K. Singh, Uttarakhand Chief Minister Pushkar Singh Dhami welcomed the workers as National Disaster Response Force men brought them out through an escape passage that had been created by inserting steel hume pipes one after the other through 57 meters of rubble. Uttarakhand Chief Minister thanked Prime Minister Narendra Modi for putting all efforts to make this operation successful. He also announced a reward of Rs 100,000 to each of the 41 construction workers. Chief Minister Dhami also said the Boknag temple at the mouth of the temple will be rebuilt and the tunnels under construction in the hill state reviewed. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has said the success of the rescue operation to bring out the trapped workers from Silkyara tunnel is making everyone emotional and hailed the courage of the workers as an inspiration to others. He also spoke to the rescued workers over phone, inquired about their well-being. Prime Minister also congratulated multiple people engaged in the rescue operation for their bravery and determination to bring out all the trapped workers out safely. Prime Minister Modi lauded the workers for staying calm despite the difficult conditions inside the tunnel.
सबसे पहले तो मैं सभी आपके और आपके सभी साथियों को बधाई देता हूं। एक सुखरूप हम इतने संकट के बाद भी निकल पाए और मेरे लिए तो बहुत ही खुशी की बात है। मैं शब्दों में वर्णन भी नहीं कर सकता हूं, वरना कुछ भी बुरा हो जाता तो शायद मन को इतनी कैसे संभाल पाते कहना कठिन था। तो ये केदारनाथ बाबा की, बद्रीनाथ भगवान की कृपा रही कि हम सब कुशल आप लोग आए हैं और 16-17 दिन समय कम नहीं होता है। आप लोगों ने बहुत बड़ी हिम्मत दिखाई और एक दूसरे का हौसला बनाए रखा। ये सबसे बड़ी बात है, क्योंकि ऐसे समय इन्हें रेलवे के डिब्बे में भी साथ साथ चलते हैं तो कभी न कभी तो तू मैं हो जाती है, लेकिन उसके बावजूद भी आपने सारा धैर्य रखा। मैं लगातार जानकारियाँ लेते रहता था, मुख्यमंत्री जी से भी लगातार संपर्क में रहता था, मेरे पीएमओ के भी अफसर वहाँ आकर के बैठे थे, तो जानकारियाँ रहती थी, लेकिन चिंता तो कम होती नहीं है। जानकारियों से तो समाधान तो होता नहीं है। लेकिन मैं सचमुच में आपके माध्यम से वहाँ जितने भी हमारे श्रमिक साथी निकल कर के आए हैं, सबको और उनके परिवार का पुण्य भी काम आया है, ताकि इस संकट की घड़ी से बाहर निकल कर के आए हैं।
Prime Minister Modi also told the workers that they will serve as an inspiration to the nation.
आपके परिवार की तपस्या भी काम में आई है, परमात्मा के आशीर्वाद भी काम में आए हैं और 140 करोड़ देशवासियों की दुआ भी काम में आई है और कुल मिलाकर के सब इस संकट से निकल कर के बाहर आए हैं। तो मेरी आप सबको बहुत शुभकामनाएं। मैंने मुख्यमंत्री जी को कहा है कि आगे अगर आप घर न जाना चाहते हैं, कोई व्यवस्था करनी है, तो क्योंकि मैं मेडिकल चेकअप पहले चाहता था कि कोई तकलीफ ना हो, लेकिन अब मुझे डॉक्टरों ने बताया कि साहब और सभी 41 के 41 लोग तबीयत उनकी अच्छी है, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है। तो आगे जैसा ही आपकी टीम चाहेगी वैसी सारी व्यवस्थाएं हमारे मुख्यमंत्री जी चिंता कर रहे हैं। तो मेरी आप सबको बहुत शुभकामनाएं हैं और आपके परिवार को भी मेरी तरफ से बहुत बहुत बधाई देना और आप लोग स्वस्थ रहें और इसी प्रकार एक टीम बना करके हिम्मत के साथ आगे हम बढ़ते रहें और आप भी देश के लिए एक प्रेरणा बनते रहें।
India's Uttarakhand Chief Minister Pushkar Singh Dhami met the rescued workers on Wednesday during his visit to the community health centre where they were undergoing treatment a day after being evacuated safely. The Chief Minister was accompanied during the visit by senior officials of the state government. They interacted with each worker, inquired about their health. The Chief Minister also handed over relief checks to them. Uttarakhand Chief Minister Pushkar Singh Dhami expressed his gratitude towards everyone involved in the rescue operation.
जो हमारे गैस कटर थे, इसके आए हुए टेक्नीशियन थे, उन्होंने बहुत जीवटता का काम किया, तो बड़ा चुनौतीपूर्ण रहा और इसमें काम करने वाले जिन जिन लोगों ने भी अपना योगदान दिया है, मैं सबका धन्यवाद करता हूँ.
On to some other stories. A Virgin Atlantic passenger jet powered by 100% sustainable aviation fuel completed its maiden New York-bound flight on Tuesday, showcasing the potential of low-carbon options, which are a tiny fraction of industry's fuel mix. This is the first time a commercial airliner has flown long-haul on 100% sustainable airline fuel. It had no paying passengers or cargo. The flight carried only Virgin's billionaire founder Richard Branson and a few others. Will return to London using conventional jet fuel. As the world talks about decarbonization, airlines are banking on fuel made from waste to reduce their emissions by up to 70%, enabling them to keep operating before electric and hydrogen-powered air travel becomes a reality in decades to come. Let's take a look at other stories making news. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi will interact with beneficiaries of Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra on 30th November via video conferencing. Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra is being undertaken across the country with the aim to attain saturation of flagship schemes of the government through ensuring that benefits of these schemes reach all targeted beneficiaries in a time-bound manner. Union Cabinet has approved the terms of reference for the 16th Finance Commission, which decides on sharing of tax revenues between the centre and the states. Information Broadcasting Minister Anurag Singh Thakur informed that the 16th Finance Commission will submit its report by October 2025, and the recommendations will be valid for a 5-year period beginning April 2026. According to the India Met Department, the low-pressure area over southeast Bay of Bengal and adjoining South Andaman Sea has now transformed into a well-marked low-pressure area as it issued a warning regarding developing weather system. Thereafter, it is expected to move in a west-northwest direction, gradually intensifying into a depression over southeast Bay of Bengal by November 30th. And still to come on DD India News Hour. As global rates turn, banks in India and Indonesia set to win. US issues over 140,000 visas to Indians in the past year.
Get ready for the groundbreaking event that will shape the future of our planet. This November, the world unite in Dubai for COP28, the pivotal UN Climate Summit. Join us as global leaders confront climate challenges and strive for a sustainable future. Join us in Dubai, where leaders from across the globe, including Prime Minister Narendra Modi from India, unite to lead the way forward. Explore cutting-edge solutions as we highlight India's leadership in the global pursuit of a greener, more sustainable future. Join DD India's round-the-clock coverage and a voice for a change. Let's shape a climate-resilient future.
Turning crisis into opportunity, transforming ideas into action, stories of real change, tales of sustainable solution. This series is going to tell stories of such change makers. Watch Change Makers on DD India.
just don't bring you the news as it unfolds. We get to the heart of the matter.
We don't just present facts. We demystify complex social, political and economic events.
We break stories that shape the world's present and future because you deserve the truth.
I am Tanvi Taneja from New Delhi.
I'm Ollie Barrett from London.
I'm Nick Harper from Washington, D.C.
Join us on DD India Global Monday to Friday at these times.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. India's banking sector will have the strongest loan and profitability profiles in the Asian market in 2024. This is according to analysts. Banks in the country have delivered a double-digit loan growth over the past few months. In fact, banks in India are expected to register a 15% loan growth next year. According to the London Stock Exchange Group, Indian banks will see a 13% rise in profits. Analysts cite India's economic growth for the sustained returns. An increase in disposable income in India is also resulting in rise in bank deposits. The US Embassy and its consulates in India have issued an unprecedented number of student visas, surpassing 140,000 between October 2022 and September of this year. This achievement is attributed to expanded interview waiver authorities, enabling frequent travelers to renew visas without visiting the embassy. Moreover, State Department has also allowed a limited group of H-1B workers to renew visas in January, initially capped at 20,000 participants. Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra reached India's Bareilly, where people were given information about various government schemes. A large number of people participated in the yatra. The beneficiaries are influencing people with their stories under Meri Kahani, Meri Zubani initiatives. And time now for all the action from the world of sports with my colleague Deepika. Deepika, the cricket action continues after the World Cup.
Absolutely, and we also have one qualifier for the upcoming T20 Cricket World Cup. So Namibia has booked its berth in the ICC Men's T20 World Cup to be held in the West Indies and the USA next year. Namibia clinched its spot after an impeccable performance at the World Cup Africa qualifier. Their 58-run victory over Tanzania ensured their remarkable qualification with one match to spare. They have now become the first team to secure one of the 2 spots available from the qualifiers event. The Eagles are also now set to progress to their 3rd consecutive Men's T20 Cricket World Cup. Their previous appearances include the 2021 and 2022 events co-hosted by the UAE and Oman along with Australia. Their campaign kicked off by defeating pre-event favourite Zimbabwe by 7 wickets. Now a well-executed victory against Uganda, the East Africans and Kenya remains to be seen. On to soccer now. Joao Cancelo and Joao Felix scored in each half to earn Barcelona a 2-1 comeback victory at home against Porto on Tuesday. The victory also booked their spot in the Champions League knockout rounds for the first time in 3 seasons. 5 times champions are back in the last 16 after securing a top 2 finish with 1 game remaining. Barcelona are top of Group H on 12 points, which is 3 ahead of Porto and Shakhtar Donetsk, who will play each other on the final match day. A decider match on who will join the Spaniards in the knockout stage. Well, Barcelona also need at least a draw against bottom side Antwerp in 2 weeks' time to guarantee top spot in the group for themselves. Staying on soccer, Kylian Mbappe struck home a penalty in the 8th minute of stoppage time to earn a 1-1 draw against Newcastle United and kept their Champions League destiny in their own hands on Tuesday. Now, due to Alexander Isak's first Champions League goal, the visitors led the Group F clash since midway through the opening half. Paris Saint-Germain had more than 30 goal attempts, but Newcastle left them on the brink of a second group defeat after a 4-1 score by Newcastle. Although Mbappe's cool finish now means that they lost only one of their last 36 group stage matches in the competition at home. Both Paris Saint-Germain and Newcastle will have to face formidable teams to guarantee for themselves a place in the last 16. On to tennis now. Spain's ATP World number 2, Carlos Alcaraz, has set his eyes on Olympic success, other bigger titles and world number 1 spot in 2024. The Spaniard sees next year as special following a 2023 campaign in which he won 6 titles, including the Wimbledon. Novak Djokovic seized back the world number 1 spot from Alcaraz. The world number 2 intends to regain the glory now.
ATP World number 2 Carlos Alcaraz had set his goals for 2024. His objective is to win the Olympic medal and fend off challenges from Novak Djokovic and other players to win the biggest titles on offer.
We are going to try to get strong, get in the best possible shape to go to Australia, to try to win it, right? Which in the end is what I'm going to do every tournament. And obviously we are going to try to do the same or better than this season. Adding Olympics, so trying to bring a medal back to my country is what I would like the most and what we are going to work on to achieve.
Carlos Alcaraz considers the upcoming year as a special. In 2023, he won 6 medals, including Wimbledon and Masters 1000, with victories in Indian Wells and Madrid. Alcaraz admitted that it would be up to him and his fellow ATP colleagues to try and halt Djokovic's supremacy on the court. The Serbian has 24 Grand Slam titles in his kitty. No doubt the world number 1 will gun for 4 more Grand Slams and an elusive Olympic gold medal in 2024.
Yes, totally. I think 2024 with the Olympics is going to be a special year for everybody. For the players, for the athletes, for the people who love sports, and obviously Djokovic. I think he has shown year after year that he is ready to win the 4 slams, that he is ready to win the gold. But well, we are here to stop him, aren't we?
The sporting rivalry between the top 2 tennis stars was hallmark of 2023. Djokovic won 3 of the 4 Grand Slam titles and seized back the number 1 spots from Alcaraz. For his part, Alcaraz says he has every intention of taking the crown back.
Moving on to archery now, India's Sheetal Devi becomes number 1 in the latest rankings released by World Archery, while Sarita Devi secures 6th position. Recently, the Asian Paralympic Committee in Saudi Arabia also declared her as the best youth athlete of the year. Sheetal Devi was the first Indian to get this prestigious award. Now, in the latest rankings released, Sheetal claims the top spot, while Jane Carla of Brazil was second on the list. Sheetal is now the first female archer without arms globally. In compound category, India's Abhishek Verma secures 3rd position. That was a quick wrap from the world of sports. Back to Shubhendra.
Thanks very much, Deepika. What an inspiring performer Sheetal Devi is. And that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and Instagram. We're also there on YouTube. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Shubhendra Ghosh from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour. Namaskar.